Welcome, everybody. It is not only two knights talk tonight, but also a king is here. Matthias Wüllenweber, the co-founder of ChessBase, because, of course, we have some quite spectacular and exciting news in the chess world. ChessBase 18. I actually have the package here. I cannot reach it. What a pity. I would have wanted to show it to you, but you can see it anyway. Matthias, how are you doing? How is the progress for ChessBase 18? How's the journey going?
The journey is going. It's very exciting, of course, in the final days, final stretch. We are all a bit stressed, but we are positively excited about this new version because I think it has some very interesting new things.
Excellent.
I'd like to show.
Yes, you have to show us at least one or two of those features. So I would go right ahead and go share the screen, and the stage is yours. And if Johannes and I have some interesting questions which come to our mind, we will rightly stomp in and ask you something.
How do I reach ELU 2600?
Excellent question.
2 months.
In 2 months, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think I have an answer for this, Johannes. Let me see. Okay, ChessBase 18. The first thing which I think is immediately visible is that we have a new design here with new icons everywhere. But the main aspect, the main thing of ChessBase 18 is player preparation and player analysis. It's really crazy that in the long history of ChessBase, we have never really tried this. There are many reasons for this, one of it being hardware performance, which only nowadays is sufficient to do some really nice things. And this new version completely centers on player characterization and player preparation and player analysis. Let me show you the first function, which is the style report. Every chess player, weak or strong, has its an individual style, which can be characterized by a couple of interesting things. And I'd like to show you how this works in ChessBase 18. In my reference database, I open the player index, and which is a list of all players in this huge mega 2025 database. And let's start, for example, with a nowadays historical world champion, and let's see how we can characterize him. We look for Karpov, and you all can now think what kind of style would you expect when we do a style report on Anatoly Karpov?
Well, I mean, I know that he's supposed to be very positional player, and not so much theoretical, but he knows, of course, he knows his openings. And I think that people say he was also tactically very keen, spotting tactical chances very quickly, but was less of a dynamic player. And his endgame skills are extremely good.
Huh.
So
okay, let's see what ChessBase 18 says to this. Well, we would have to do 2 reports to answer Johannes' prediction correctly. Johannes talked about the style, the positional style, and about the tactical correctness. And there are 2 different functions to answer this. We will talk about both today. The style report describes the style. You can see the button here. And the error report describes the tactical correctness, the calculating capabilities of a player, which usually are proportional to his ELO rating, but there are some interesting differences for different players. We start with a style report because it's very fast. We select style report here, this icon, and then we have a little mask to enter some parameters. Of course, we only want to look at the tournament games, the long games, because they differ strongly from the blitz games in style and character. And let's see, maybe when Karpov played for the World Championship, which was in the early 70s. Let's start with 1974, and let's limit the analysis to maybe 1995 when he played Kasparov in these years. And I click OK. We will look now at a couple of thousand games, but it's very fast for 1,500 games. And now we have this characterization of Karpov. And the first interesting graph are the evaluations here, and I think it immediately proves of Johannes' prediction, and that you can see that it is a huge green bar. We have a huge green bar at positional play, very high. Also a high green bar for endgame capabilities, and we have 0% for aggressiveness and risk. So Karpov, a very controlled player, positional player, and we not only have those graphical grades, the evaluations of the player, but we also have some observations, some text observations, which try to describe the conclusions that ChessBase 18 draws from the 1,500 games it has just analyzed for us for style. First observation is strong as white. This means that the score of Karpov, simple statistics, with white is higher than you would expect from a normal grandmaster. So good opening preparation. Strong openings, long theory lines. This somehow contradicts Johannes' prediction. So the ChessBase 18 sees, in this period of time, sees Karpov as a well-prepared theoretical player who achieves clear opening advantages with white, in contrast to normal grandmaster averages. Narrow repertoire for black, no gambits as black, to be expected. Karpov is a strong defender and creates counterplay in positions where he's under pressure. And the main observation here is in bold font, because the program sees a strong statistical significance for those statements. Karpov is a positional player who keeps things under control. And finally, we have good in endgames, which Johannes already predicted.
Sweet.
Then we have a short overview over the repertoire, which is quite useful if you prepare for somebody. Then you immediately see, okay, very strong with white, 3+. Very strong performance in Queen's Gambit, orthodox, and with black plays quite well against c4. And now comes an interesting part. How does the program draw those conclusions? How can the program make statements about, is this guy a positional player or not? There are a lot of strategical themes which ChessBase 18 understands, detects in games, and can then weigh the statistical significance of those themes with respect to average grandmaster samples. And now in this report, we have a long section of theme games where examples for those themes in games are shown, and we could click on it and load a game which, for example, illustrates a situation where Karpov has counterplay with white coming under pressure from black. I just scroll through these themes to show you how many there are. We have simple things, trivial things like opposite castling. We have more interesting things like sharp games with white, sharp openings, calm games. Queenside play, very important to determine positional player, center play, open positions or closed positions, space advantage, disadvantage, active play, and so on, and so on, and so on. You can see there are many strategical themes which create a picture of this player personality. So one final thing here, to not extend this too much and to not keep me talking for all the time. For example, if we look at this bishop pair white here, in average GM grandmaster games, there would be 12% of the games would be described as bishop pair is an important strategic aspect for white. And Karpov is basically the same. So with the bishop pair, he just plays quite what would be expected from normal statistics. For example, if we have double pawns with white, normal grandmaster games would exhibit this feature in 20% of the games here. But in Karpov's games, we only see it in 14%. And this is pretty significant. this is also expressed by these 3 minus signs here, which say the feature doubled pawns for white is much less prominent in Karpov's games than in average games.
That's funny.
Karpov hates weak pawn structures, and this is also one of the aspects which lead to the conclusion Karpov is a positional player.
May I ask a couple of questions?
Sure. Yeah.
So first of all, this seems to be ideal if you prepare some lessons or if you want to improve your positional play. You just create this report and then you replay the games by Karpov. Well, say I want to know how to play with the bishop's pair, or I want to see how to avoid double pawns. And so this would save a lot of chess authors a lot of work. But more interesting is that how huge does the sample size have to be? And also, Karpov is a well-known player who has played thousands of games. How far does it help me to improve my chess to have such a function? So if I enter my name, do I find something useful about my play, or areas in which I can improve, in which I should improve, in which I might improve?
Definitely. I think that this is, of course, the motivation behind this function, Johannes. The motivation it's a nice side effect that we can describe all these historic players. But the main motivation is to improve your own chess, because it points, first of all, well, people have a vague idea what kind of style they play, but it's quite interesting if the program objectively tells them what kind of player are you, and for example, are you successful against weak pawns of your opponent, or are you not successful with that? And with this statistics, you can immediately draw those conclusions and understand your personal weaknesses. Sample size is a very interesting question with all these statistical experiments, and my own feeling is that you get interesting statements with a sample size of more than 50, 60, 70 games. And if you like, I can show you a historic player with much less games, and when we can, in contrast to Karpov, let's have a look at Morphy. There are not many games of Morphy in the mega database. 270.
Okay, can I again predict? You know,
yeah, please. Yeah, you are a historian.
The accepted wisdom about Morphy.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how, because for his time, his opening knowledge was excellent. He played the openings much better than his contemporaries. His tactical abilities, he was also calculating very precisely. And as far as I understand, his positional skills are underestimated. So I would think that the program says that his positional play is very, very good. I think he hardly reached the end game, or in less games than usual. And so I think we would have someone who has a lot of quick wins, who is excellent in the opening, who has an excellent tactical vision, and who's a strong positional player. And end game, I don't know.
Wow.
I'm really curious now, because your predictions are so interesting. This is very interesting. Okay, style report for Paul Morphy. We select from 1853 to 2024. So be sure to catch every game of Morphy.
Yeah.
Of course, this is just a matter of 1 second. So, we don't have all the 200 games. Some games were skipped because they're obviously simuls. And now let's look at Johannes' prediction. And this is fantastic, because Johannes mentioned very interesting, which I was not aware of. He said that Morphy was, in terms of opening preparation, was ahead of his contemporaries. And I think we have a huge theory result here. And let me just explain how this is deducted. The program makes, though it is very fast, it makes some very short engine evaluations. For example, for every game, it evaluates the position at the end of the known theory for this time. And it shows that Morphy achieves huge opening advantages against his opponents. though he doesn't play modern theory, seen as in his time, he always got out very well of the opening. So Johannes' first prediction, fantastically proven. The decided games are obviously very high. Not a guy who makes very few short draws is the observation. Many quick wins. I think that was also being predicted by Johannes. Strong openings, clear opening advantage for Wise, and also equalizes well with Black. I think the statement few modern main lines is to be expected with a player from the 19th century. Yeah. Plays gambits with both colors. Who would have thought that? 19th century player playing gambits. Okay. And now it gets interesting. He avoids exchanges, keeps kings on the board. You notice that this is in bold font, so it's an important, a significant statistical observation. Really loves sacrifices, completely fearless, attacks the king. And now let's have a look at the grades here for aggressiveness and risk. So you see, in comparison to modern grandmasters, the system is gorged, normed by the values of modern grandmasters. And so Morphy has an aggressiveness of 250%. Compare this to Karpov, who said who had 0%. So all in all, people might think that we prepared this in advance, this nice prediction of Johannes, because he was so spot on. But we didn't do this, and I'm very glad that this came out so well.
Okay, but I don't know, but maybe we can, some aspect, let's say, we would like to improve Arne's play. So
forget it.
Yeah. Okay. So we take a sample of Arne's games, and then we look at his statistics and say we might identify areas where he can improve. So maybe 2,600 is out of reach, maybe not, I don't know. But well, at least a little improvement, or well, areas where he might improve. Is that also possible? And does it make sense? I mean, are the results valid?
I need to quickly mention one thing, because of course I played with this feature as well, because it's just so much fun. And I checked my online games in bullet, just, to have fun. Well, What came out, my theory is 0% and my risk is 500%. Spot on. But I thought
we all know you, and this is correct. You're more aggressive.
That is absolutely correct. But I thought wait, theory is 0. I mean, the truth hurts, but that is hard. So I checked, of course, Svetlana Demchenko's and Leon Mendonca's gameplay as well. Good friends of mine. And yeah, they have a far higher theory value than me. So just from only my online games, because my real life games, they're just, I think it's 15 or something, not even.
Oh.
Yeah, it's too little, far too little. So it will not be possible. But I think even from bullet games, which I played online, you can give a tiny idea, unless you play very differently, of what I could take care of. Also, my end games were quite high. And that I was curious, and I checked some of my end games, and I think yes, but I was often just a bit luckier.
But there's a statistical bias. If you look at your online games, you never make quick draws. So your fighting spirit, the so-called tenacity here, which is also very high from Morphy, is usually much higher in online games because you never make quick draws like you would do in a long game. And also your endgame affinity, there are some statistical terms in the evaluation of endgame affinity here, which look at how many endgames are there in your games compared to average grandmaster games, and how long do you play your games. And every online game is longer also in endgames than a normal tournament game would be. So the probability for endgames in online games is higher. So your endgame affinity, there's a statistical bias. You have to know this. It is always high in online games.
Makes sense, of course.
Yeah.
Now, one point. Okay, to answer Johannes' question, I guess the answer is yes. Also, if I have too little games, then of course we cannot get an idea about it. But even checking the online blitz games gives a hint, at least.
Definitely, you should do this. And There are functions. I don't think we have time to show all of this, but there are functions now that you can download your Lichess or chess.com games from within ChessBase. Within seconds, you have your games downloaded, and then you can play around with these new statistics features very nicely, because there you have huge samples of games, to answer Johannes' question.
Yeah, 100%. One thing, there's two questions, and then we can continue. It feels as if everything got quicker. Is this just an illusion I have, or were there some tweaks and peaks here and there?
The program, of course. This is when you work for a couple of months on a program you detect things. If the developers work a lot with ChessBase every day from morning to evening, you detect a lot of things we sped up the data format significantly. One reason being that we have this huge databases of games now, which require more speed and reliability in the data format. And yes, ChessBase 18 is definitely quicker than ChessBase 17. And also the graphics has been optimized. And cut a long story short, the answer is yes.
Excellent. So one thing about the strategy element about all of this. So this gives a very nice style report. What about certain strategies? I guess ChessBase also has something to offer with this feature.
Again, you would wonder, why didn't they try that before in the long history ChessBase? Searching for strategical themes, such an obvious thing to do. The answer, again, it's complicated. It's complicated, more complicated than you think. Maybe to look for things like space advantage or counterplay or so. But since we needed all these terms, these chess terms to describe a player, we had a nice spin-off in its functionality. I showed you all these example games which show those strategical elements. And you can now, in an arbitrary sample of games, like, for example, in the games of the mega database, you can search for those strategical themes. So if I call up the search mask, the advanced search mask, we have this new strategy tab here. And there you have 30 different strategical themes, which you can combine or click. And you have things about the structure, pawn structure, for example, pawn Mariota on the queen's side. You have things about the pieces, strong pieces, like the pair of bishop. And you have things like plans, for example, king's attack or successful defense or center play.
Or you can even mark multiple ones at the same search?
Yes. Then the program require them to be combined in the games, but not at the same time. For example, you could have a bishop pair in the early middle game and strong rooks later, not in the same position.
Of course,
Let's do something very simple. Let's look for a strong pair of bishops. It's of course trivial to search for material distributions. We do this since many years. It's trivial to search for a bishop pair in position. But it's interesting to search for a strong pair of bishops, where the bishops dominate the position. That's what the strategy search can do for you. And let's demonstrate how this works. I just click OK, and the search starts. And we don't have to search the whole mega database. You can see the first results are, of course, from the historical games. And I stop here because the search works at a speed of 160 games per second, which is pretty fast. But of course, it has to replay every game and analyze it. So for the whole mega database, it would take a couple of hours.
Okay, sure. This is just for demonstration.
And now we have a result list here. And you can see, if you look at the first column, the list of results is not sorted like the megadays, but it has a different order of games. Why is that the case? I will show you a new column here. It's called theme strengths. And the theme strengths expresses the significance of the strategical theme which we search for in this game. And you can see that our search result is sorted by theme strengths. And if I scroll down here, the value decreases further and further and further. And let's now look at the top game, Hirschfeld versus Andersen, loaded. And then we have a dominating bishop pair. Well, of course, that's actually the final move where the bishop pair goes off the board with the bishop c6 sacrificed. But you can see if we look at this position here and here and here, you can see that this is really a dominating pair of bishops.
I wonder if there can be even any better than this. This is like the epiphany of the bishop pair almost. It looks
but you could run it for hours on the Mega, and then you could look for the game which had the most dominating bishop pair in the history of chess. Doesn't get better than that. Okay, so one thing which is also quite nice about this, you see we have this slightly unknown and underestimated button, detect sacrifices, which does quick annotations for a game. It looks for sacrifices, puts diagram in 1 second, and this quick annotation here now also annotates the game with the significant strategical themes which it found in the search. So if we click on this, it takes 1 or 2 seconds, and then of course we get our diagrams, which just the 17 users might know, but we also get small strategical annotations here, which depict those themes. For example, here the program says, okay, we see a space advantage for white, or after bishop e5 we see a strongly asymmetrical position, or here we see bishops of opposite color. So this is just a nice little gimmick that you can immediately see what kind of strategical themes ChessBase thinks can be seen in this game.
This is massively helpful for me because I'm the worst strategic person ever. I always try to believe I am so good in strategies, but I'm terrible. And it shows in my chess games. Johannes, I will give you also another chance to ask a question, but I have a question on my mind, and we continue with another theme, which is very important, which is also roughed up the chess world a little bit. What about updating something like this? Because this, as you mentioned, it is so complex. You've been working on all of this. It is difficult. Is it like where there's a computer game which is coming out and then there's going to be updates and updates and updates and updates? Or will you have everything done by a certain time and then sporadically update if there's something to be updated?
Well, we continuously update ChessBase, obviously. There are several reasons for this. There are always updates of 2 types. We fix bugs which we detect in the program, and we also describe those in the change log, which is installed in the program directory. You can see what we do with every update, and a normal ChessBase lifetime which is lifetime means the time until the next version, would have 10 to 15 updates, and you can see what happens in those updates if you open the changelog in the program directory. Mm-hmm. And also we add small new functions, obviously no big functions, but we have some small ideas. People write, have suggestions, can't you smooth this out a bit? And we find this interesting. We put it in right away and improve the existing functionality until we do the next major release.
Excellent. Johannes, do you have any last questions or?
No, not right now, but when I was looking at this, I thought you can have a lot of fun with that, you know? I mean, you can just analyze or just have a look at games with bishops pair or weak pawns. And I don't know, but I think one might also come to different conclusions about historical players. I don't know whether this is true or not, but say maybe if you take the games Adolf Andersen played and you take the serious games, not the casual games, not like the Immortal game, which was an offhand game, but just, say his matches against contemporary players who were roughly of equal strength. And I think you probably, or perhaps you come to different conclusions about about the style of these players. Or, well, just for instance, just to come back to this Lasker debate, because I think it was Reti who claimed that Lasker was a psychological player. And I think if you analyze the games, or let ChessBase analyze the games by Lasker, you would see that he would score very highly in all matters. Maybe not so much in the opening, but in strategy, aggressiveness, tenacity, endgame play, tactical, and so on. And so it's not his psychological skills, but his chess skills. And if you suppose that these data are valid, I think this is a much more stable foundation than just, the feeling you get when you play through games by grandmasters or famous players.
Nicely summed, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a program or a function that you can have lots of fun with, and that's also can be very, very helpful in training. That's my first impression.
Yes, it is indeed. Okay, now we have to talk about the unfortunate subject of cheating once again, and there is another thing which is related to ChessBase 18, because you were very recently tweeting Matthias, and I will show the tweet right now, that you have a blunder report. And in this blunder report, you were giving the idea that ChessBase 18 can learn from mistakes and blunders to predict the elo of the player, which sounds insane, actually. And you gave some very spicy examples, which were Kirill Shevchenko, and let me show the other one, Igor Srauzis, and also Magnus Carlsen. And they all have a blunder elo, a so-called blunder elo, you probably named it like that, of 2,900 plus. So, Matthias, you have to tell us what is that about, please, because it sounds very, very interesting.
Oh, maybe just to
Yes.
to interrupt, just for those who are not following the chess world so closely.
Thank you.
Shevchenko was recently accused of cheating in the Spanish team championship, and Igor Rauzes is a grandmaster who was famous because he was caught with a phone in the bathroom, and he was penalized for cheating. So these are two famous. Shevchenko, the case is still pending. There are no proofs yet, but these are two players who are under strong suspicion of cheating.
Yeah, let me share my screen again. And when we did this style report, one important part of a player's capabilities or characteristics was completely not looked at. It's this tactical capabilities, tactical precision, calculation abilities. Why? Why didn't we include this in the style report? Because to draw conclusions about tactical cleanness, tactical capabilities, you have to analyze the game, obviously. And analyzing a game, you have to start an engine for every move. This takes time, a lot of time. Just think about it. If you take 1 minute per game and then you look at 500 games, it's not fun to wait for a result in a tactics report so long. So we didn't look at this in the style report, but I thought, oh, this is really a pity. We have to make statements about the tactical abilities of players. And this led to the second interesting function for player analysis in ChessBase 18, the error report. And I think this is quite it hasn't even been mentioned in ChessBase advertising, because when we started this, the advertising was basically finished. But it was so crazy that we need to do this, because it really is important to describe a player as a whole. And actually, we found some very interesting things in this. And let me show you the first, I think, absolutely spectacular statistical statement which you can make about chess in general. It is very obvious to you, you understand it right away, but it's very nice to see this statistically proven. if you look at errors, at blunders in games of every chess player, there's a clear relationship. And 5 minutes before we started this podcast, I started this again on a database and created the following graph, which we see here. I just called up the error report, and since error report takes time, it takes a couple of minutes. I did this in preparation. I don't want to bore you with waiting for the program here. And I just clicked somewhere in my sample grandmaster database where we have players between 2,500 and 2,600. And I said, no specific player, just analyze those games. And I got this very nice linear relationship, which I should like to explain to you. You have a graph here where on the x-axis, you can see the complexity, the sharpness of the position. On the right-hand side, you have the very complex, very sharp, complicated positions. On the left-hand side, you have the easy, the calm positions. And the y-axis here is the average size of the blunders in those types of positions. And the relationship that we see it's really spectacular. And in this rather arbitrary random sample, it's again proven, as it is always proven for every player all the time. This is really a law of chess. The relationship between position complexity and average error size is linear. It's a line, it's a straight line. And you can see this straight line here fantastically expressed again here in this random sample of 200, 300 games, which I chose half an hour ago. And this fundamental relationship. I don't know whether anybody has ever investigated this. For me, this is extremely satisfying for two reasons. Reason number one is that looking at this line, it's obviously a characteristic of every player. It's kind of a tactical fingerprint, which we can detect for every player. You can look at your own tactical fingerprint and you can learn something about your calculation abilities. So we can make statements about players by looking at this graph. But the second thing, which is, I cannot tell you how satisfying this is personally for me, is that our function which describes the complexity of a position is obviously crucial in drawing such conclusions. It's proven by this relationship that the way we describe a position as sharp or not sharp, which is actually a quite complicated piece of code in ChessBase. It has many, many aspects of a position which it looks at. This function is obviously quite sound because it leads to these fantastic statistical relationships. So we proved something fundamental about chess here. It's really a fundamental law of chess. And we prove that our way to express sharpness, which is used in many places in the program, like beauty report, sacrifice search, and so on, is very sound. And it's very a good result. And one final word about this graph here before we move on to specific players. This is just a general sample of grandmasters, is that you see this little pink bars here, and they depict how high is the number of positions investigated here. And you can see that there is a decreasing frequency of more complex positions, and that the normal positions are more frequent. So we have much less blunders in the samples in complicated positions, but the average size is nevertheless higher. So you can see this very nice green line.
And
now we can do this for every player. And this obviously was the aim of this function. And it takes a couple of minutes per player. I prepared some graphs here, and let's open, for example, the graph for this player.
May I shortly interrupt?
Yeah.
And I hope I got this graphics right. I mean, Arne is doing a series of underdog wins, and there's always this question: if you play against a stronger player, whether you follow the strategy trying to simplify the position or whether to go for complicated position. If I look at this graph, I would think that going for complicated positions is the better strategy. because, I mean, of course, I would make more blunders or more tactical errors than a stronger player, but the chance to, well, how to say, to lure the stronger player into making a mistake or into making an error or making a blunder is higher in complex positions, and I might just be lucky and get a lucky punch and then exploit this error. Or is this just too far-fetched a conclusion?
No, I think, well, of course, the best chess book ever, best practical chess book ever written was Simon Webb's Chess for Tigers. Some listeners might know this. I really love this book. And how do you play against a stronger player? You lure him into complicated positions. So
how to trap heffalumps.
Yes. Yeah.
How to catch rabbits and how to trap heffalumps.
Let's just have a little look in this function, in this graph, in this error report. And you see there are many more statistics here. And those statistics are not useful for this average sample. We have to look at specific players here. Mm-hmm. But you can see that the error report shows you the blunder sizes, for example, against stronger opponents, equal opponents, and weaker opponents. Since this is an average sample of grandmasters, this is not very meaningful here. But if you try this on players, you will find that players are quite different in this. Some weak players score quite nicely against stronger opponents, and score badly against weaker opponents. This is quite funny. And the other way around. Some people like to kill weaker opponents, and they are under stress or they falter against stronger opponents, make bigger blunders. You can see this very nicely, and you can see it for your own games. And you can draw conclusions about yourself and learn something about where you should train. How do you play if you're under attack? Do you blunder if you are under attack? Do you blunder if you play an attack on your own? You can all detect all these things about your own games from this graph here.
We will take a little look at Magnus Carlsen now, but I just have to ask, how long does it take to check out Magnus Carlsen? How many games has he played? 4,000 more?
I can show you the quickly how this functionality works. If I'm in the reference database and we have a look at one player, let's have a look at Carlsen, for example, and we click on error report.
6,000, jeez.
Yeah, we only look at the long games, and maybe we could do this. Let's say from 1 year, we could say, okay, we look at Carlsen,
okay.
23. And I would just start you and we do a quick check. And while I start this, you can see that this really takes time. It takes 1.5 seconds per game. I have to stress, this is extremely fast for analyzing a whole game. You see the whole game, and the engine is looking at every move of cards in this game. Mm-hmm. It's taking 1.3 seconds per game on my machine.
And a sample size of roughly 70, that gives already an impression. If you want to really get deep into it, should be a bit more games, I assume.
Yeah, but I have to tell you that that this is also has this very, very short search time, which we have chosen now, as problems. Because obviously, if you have 20 to 30 milliseconds analysis time per move. So your engine cannot search longer than 30 milliseconds. Gotcha. Otherwise, this function would take crazy long time. So, for example, if you look at strong computer games where the top engine calculates for 3 minutes per move, then there would be false positives for blunders, because obviously our 30 millisecond search doesn't see the same things as a top engine which calculates for 3 or 5 minutes in a position. Makes sense. If you use this function on strong computer games, it would maybe rate them at 2800, but not much higher, because there wouldn't be so many false positives. Same with Carlsen, for example. Carlsen also calculates deeper than an engine at 20 milliseconds. For example, here in this rather arbitrary sample, we have a blunder ELU of 2770, which is lower than his normal performance, but this is statistical error, and I did a very rough search. Sure. You would have to use the setting, which you saw in the previous parameter dialog, search longer, then you get much higher results for Carlsen because the search is just too fast. But it's for sake of demonstration, it's nice. You can see it took 2 minutes, and then we have at least for 2024 we have a quick error report of Carlsen. But we can still make some observations here. For example, the very first quite interesting thing which you see with very few players. You only see it with the very top players in chess, that our error line is horizontal. It doesn't decrease. So Carlsen in 2024 is such a good calculator that his error rate in complex position doesn't rise. It even decreases a bit. So within the error of course, there are strong statistical fluctuations here, a small sample size. There were possibly some rapid games in it, not detected in the mega, and a very, very short 20 millisecond search. It tells you Carlsen is very, very precise in complex positions. And you would not see this with any normal grandmaster. They always have these rising error line. Can you see the dotted line here? The dotted line is the reference line of average grandmasters, which clearly is rising, and Carlsen is not rising. You have a negative slope in the line. You see this very rarely. You see it in correspondence chess. And this leads to the next subject, I think to the subject of this podcast. You see it in correspondence chess, and when I looked at some players, I found funny results. And let me just show you in the old result, this player Rouses, which was proven to be somebody who used, he admitted to using a phone in the bathroom. And I looked at some games from 1 year only, 2019, when this was detected. And you can see the error report, unfortunately in German here, old version, but you can see a blunder ELU of 2960 for this player. And again, a horizontal or slightly decreasing error line. It's not the objective of this function to detect engine cheating, but it might be quite good at it. I don't know. I just checked that through something. Let's have a look at Shevchenko, the other guy. I think we have him here. Same effect. Huge blunder ELU, much higher than his normal ELU. And again, horizontal line. Personally, I think that this horizontal line is pretty significant. You see it in two types of games of the very, very top grandmasters and games of correspondence players. And there's sometimes you see it in small game samples of weaker players when they play very, very calm, very positional players who have no risk at all in the position. They manage to play pretty correctly. And though they might have a rating of 2200 or so, they have a very, very low blunder rate because they never get into complicated positions. So for that reason, you can see there is a statement about the games here with this sharp value. You can see, is this a sharp player or not? And in the case of Shevchenko, you see he's much sharper than normal grandmasters, much sharper games. And this in connection with this high blunder ELU and with the horizontal line, I think you can at least should draw the conclusion to have a closer look at those games.
That is very interesting. Absolutely. Yeah, we will talk about this for a little bit longer. Matthias, I know you are busy as hell, and I thank you so much that you took the time to present us a couple of functions about ChessBase 18. It was a blast. You can unshare the screen already because Johannes and we will carry on with the rest of our show. We also present the game, of course. Once again, Matthias, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me and for giving me so much time to show all this stuff.
That was great.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Johannes, you were watching a super interesting interview with a very, very charismatic chess player from Australia, who I also had the pleasure to interview in Budapest. at the Olympics. It was also his birthday. He turned 40 in the night of the what is it called? The Bermuda party. So
in
that
Budapest.
was yes, exactly. But you were watching the interview and you've found a couple of super interesting things to think about and philosophize about.
Yeah, actually, after we did the podcast or the show about cheating, I happened to watch two interesting podcasts by this C-Squared podcast with Fabiano Caruana and Cristian Chirila. In the first podcast, they talked with Daniel Naroditsky, and they talked about the accusations Kramnik raised against him. This was very, very interesting. So I think it's worth checking out because Naroditsky quite eloquently and convincingly defended himself. But what I want to talk about here is the second podcast, which was following shortly after, also with the C-Squared podcast. And they had David Smerdon as a guest. David Smerdon is an Australian grandmaster. And he's also an assistant professor of economics at the University of Queensland in Australia, which is close. I mean, the university is close to Brisbane. And I have to say this because I spent half a year at the University of Brisbane, so it's always dear to my heart. And they had various topics. They covered various topics in this podcast. And Smerdon has various areas he covers, and he said he had a kind of, one kind is that he said he is interested in chess, and he was trying to go deeper into the problem of cheating. Mm-hmm. And to that, he ran an extremely interesting experiment. He said he organized a cheating tournament. So that is, he invited players to a tournament and said, in this tournament, people will cheat. It was an 8-player tournament, a double round robin, and each player was informed that there would be cheating going on. And it was an online tournament under over-the-board conditions. That is, the players were controlled, and the cheating worked like this, that selected players were told before the game that now they are the cheater in this game, and they received moves, suggestions by Smerdon, by text. And as Smerdon said, this could vary from 1 move per game to 20 moves per game. And the ELO gap between these players was also quite high. I think the lowest rated was 1700 or 1600 ELO, and the highest was 2360. At least this person was an IM. And then after the games, after the tournament, people were asked who they suspected of cheating. So you could accuse, your opponent said, I think this opponent, I lost this game, and this man, he was cheating. But it came with a cost. So say you said your opponent was cheating, and you were proven, or Smerdon said no, there was no cheating. He was given no moves. Then 1 point was deducted from your score. But if you were proved right, if the opponent was cheating, you got the point you lost in the game back and got an extra point. So, but the interesting thing is that the conclusions Smerdon drew from this, and I mean, he drew a number of conclusions, so you should definitely check out this podcast. But what I found interesting, that some of his conclusions are counterintuitive. So, for instance, the ability, and after the tournament, he selected 7 games and asked people to find the games in which there was cheating going on. And it turned out that we chess players are extremely, extremely weak at finding and spotting cheaters. So he was spreading this. He was a survey, and he invited Chess.com users to guess the cheaters or the games in which people cheated. And now, maybe just how many people do you think, percentage-wise, of about 10,000 people took part in this survey? they filtered down this to 4,000 that were actually serious players. And how many percent of these 4,000 do you think, Arne, got it right? I mean, you were able to guess which games
You were also
were cheated in.
you were asking me yesterday already, and I gave an answer. But for you at home, of course, think of a number right now. How many percent do you think it was? I was guessing roughly 80%. I was wrong.
Yeah. So he said it was about 53%, and more experienced players who took time were about 58 or 59%.
Oh, okay.
So, and to quote Smerdon, he said, "We suck at this. We are absolutely unable to, or we are not very capable of spotting cheaters." And he also said that the stronger the players and the more experience you have, that then it's
The more
easier.
susceptible you are, right?
Yeah, but the downside is that also if you think you understand chess very well, so if you're a strong player, you also overestimate your abilities to spot a cheater. And what is also interesting is, which I found quite amazing, that you tend to accuse your opponent of cheating if you play badly. So that's the main reason. So if you play badly, you tend to think that your opponent is cheating. And Smerdon explained it like that this is just a phenomenon. You want to put the blame on someone else, you know. You
Human nature.
Yeah, human nature. Yeah. I play badly, but it's, you know, my
But it
opponent
cannot be
must
me.
be cheating. Must be cheating.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. And I thought, I mean, this idea was very, very interesting. And I think it's not online cheating, it's basically over the board cheating. And also what he said is that the great advantage of this experiment is that he had a certain sample size of games in which you can be absolutely certain that cheating was going on.
Yeah.
And also what also interesting, this absolutely stunned me, is that people who were given moves tend to play worse, basically, because, I mean, say we play a game and then I get the move and I get a move and say you play knight e5, and then I'm waiting for the next move and suddenly the position is totally complex and I think I'm lost without the computer. And so I'm totally insecure and I don't know what to do. And so my level of confidence decreases and I play worse and worse and worse. So a very, very interesting interview about cheating. He also talks about women's chess and chess in academia, the reason why so few Australians are chess professionals. And the first time he met Fabiano Caruana. So, well, definitely worth checking out this interview.
Indeed. What we're checking out now to end our show is you were kind enough to show us or pick out a nice game by David Smerdon because he actually played
Magnus Carlsen at the Chess Olympiad 2016 in Baku. And after this Olympiad, Smerdon decided not to follow a career as a chess player, but to focus on academics. But before I show this game, I would like to show something else. Oh, is this?
Yeah, it's correct.
It's correct. This is
Yes. The truth is, Carsten Müller suggested, or there was even another player, two players, and one of them was Carsten Müller. They suggested I should read this book.
You should definitely read this book, and it's his book about the complete chess swindler. And Smerdon gathered examples from chess swindles. And a swindle, you know, I mean, what a swindle is just, you have a lost position, and what you do is you try to muddy the waters, you try to stir up trouble, you try to pose as many problems to your opponent as you can. And Smerdon explains how you do this, how you can actually, there are strategies to do this. But what I find most charming about this book is that because of the irrational nature of the games presented in this, the irrational natures of these examples, say you blunder a piece in the opening, you know, but you continue to play and then suddenly unusual patterns arise. And of course, if your opponent played correctly, you would lose the game. But then suddenly things get a little bit difficult, and you have all kinds of strange constellations. And so apart from the practical value that you are taught how to turn bad games around, you increase your tenacity factor, so to speak. There is a wealth of absolutely unusual chess games in which material considerations do not seem to be important at all. So it's quite fun to play through, to walk through this book and to look at least at some examples. But now I would like to present the promised game.
Let's go.
So this is David Smerdon against Magnus Carlsen, played at the Chess Olympiad 2016 in Baku, and Smerdon had white and was playing e4, c5, and now c3, d5, queen d5. Well, the c3 is Sicilian, so this is not a sharp line, but this is just, well, probably Smerdon as an academic is not a theoretician, but a practical player.
I have to quickly ask, this was a classical game, right, or not?
It was a classical game at the Chess
Wow.
Olympiad. Yeah, no,
Wow.
just very, very serious, you know. And Carlsen, of course, wanted to win because I think he had about, I don't know, maybe 200 plus more rating points.
It shows 326 plus, so it is an underdog draw, actually.
Definitely an underdog. So, and he plays queen d8 in this position. I mean, I have to admit, I don't know the theory in this line, but everything seems to be normal. Bishop e7, bishop e3, queen d4. And now you could take with cd4, but then you have an isolated pawn. And so white plays queen takes d4, offering an exchange of queens. Castle's king side, Castle's queen side. Carlsen avoids the exchange. And now the position gets quite sharp. White plays queen g4. And well, the engine evaluates this position as equal, but I mean, personally, I have to say, if I had this position in the game, I would feel quite comfortable as white because black is not developed. I have attacking chances. The rook and the queen are opposite each other, so I would be quite happy.
Whoa.
No? Yeah. Knight e3 comes as a surprise, but if you play rook d8, your queen on g4 is also hanging. So
Yeah, and you lose a piece after. Okay.
Yeah, so Smerdon plays fe3, queen c7, bishop d3, quite normal development, knight d7, going to f6 to protect the king, offering the queen exchange again. Yeah, Carlsen doesn't want that, and he plays queen c5. So, and now Smerdon gets, well, how to say this? You know, he plays
Crazy.
a double-edged. He plays a double-edged move. He plays b4.
Well, I saw it immediately, and I thought, like, this would be an interesting thing.
Well, I have to admit, I would never consider such a move because you weaken your king. You know, you weaken your king, and
Overrated.
overrated. So, and now Carlsen plays queen c6, and now white continues in style, and he plays knight to d4,
Beautiful.
attacking the queen, but also sacrificing a pawn on g2, which, well, again, in a practical game, I would think that black just cannot take this pawn.
No.
I get an attack on the g file.
But then again, what else can black do here right now than take
he
the
could
pawn?
He could go with the queen to a4 and then
A4, okay.
attacking the pawn on
Okay.
A4. So after queen b2, things are roughly equal, which is hard to believe, actually.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. But anyway, Carlsen was bold enough to take the pawn. I mean, he wanted to win.
What a player.
And he invited, what a player. And he invited Smerdon to attack him, which Smerdon did. Rook g1.
Another
queen
pawn?
h2.
No, okay, not
No,
A2.
no. No, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I should have showed this. You know, if you play queen to a2, what would you do here?
Take on G7 already? No, it's a bit early, or isn't it?
I don't
Oh
think so.
my goodness!
I think it's just the time.
Oh, I should have played against Carlsen. Look at that.
And after
Yes.
queen h6,
How to
well, you
avoid the
can-
checkmate.
yeah, you can give a couple of checks here, but
Yeah, that you can give a check on A1. You know, it's just revenge checks, which won't do the trick. Bishop, and then you take on c3, doesn't matter. Or does it? No, yeah, well, you have to be a bit more precise, maybe. Yeah, king just goes aside. Ooh!
And I threaten mate on g7, and I threaten mate on h7, and black has no way.
I feel I should play a chess tournament.
Yeah.
It's good for my ego here.
So Carlsen avoided that, and he played queen to h3, and now rook g3, queen h4.
It never ends.
Yeah, and this actually played queen h4, and the engines point out that this was an error. You know, the correct. Sorry, that's the game. The correct move was queen to h5.
Okay.
And after rook g1. Okay, the pawn g7 is attacked, and black has this. And now things get crazy because, as the engines point out, white has knight takes e6. So, and if black takes with the f pawn, fe6, white continues with bishop to g6. If you take the queen, I take your queen, and then I take the rook, and I'm materially up. But more interesting is this, rook g6. So you cannot go to h8 because then rook g6 wins immediately. You have to go to queen. Now I give this check, king h8, and now queen to g3.
Oh, it's a quiet move in this position.
It's a quiet move, and threatening rook g8 and
mate.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, you know that the engines concept knight f6, but after knight e5, white has a devastating attack. Yeah.
Interesting.
Bishop e7 is hanging. Yeah. So, and this is the interesting part. After knight e6, the correct move is knight to e5. That's the only defense according to the engine. As we just saw, maybe Carlsen would have found this move because he seems to be very good in complex positions.
I've heard about that, yeah.
And after knight e5, white has knight e5, bishop to e6, and now white has rook to g5.
Okay.
Yeah. So
takes.
You take. So, and where to go with the queen now?
Well, h3 is...
Yeah, I mean, if you go to h6, I win with rook to g6, and I have a material plus. You know, we have to take with the queen, and then I take and I play with queen against two rooks, and this is much better. And so he should go back to h3, and after rook g3, queen h5, rook g5, we have a kind of strange kind of repetition of moves.
Yes.
So this would have been the logical conclusion of the game, or that's what the engines say. But Carlsen played queen to h4.
So the question is, what happens if you takes back, and then rook goes to h3 and threatening?
That was the game continuation. That was the game continuation. So, and now rook to h3.
I watched ChessBase 18 tutorial, and I play like a GM.
Yeah, exactly. Very precise, very precise. Arne, you should be careful not to be accused of cheating.
Yeah, it's already done. I check my blunder report right now.
Yeah, okay. Bishop g5. And now white has
it's a draw, right?
Yeah, he has basically an immediate draw. But he played this.
Oh.
I mean, and again, the engines and analysis said that white could play this. And if black goes king g8, I get an advantage with rook g1. And if I play this, I can play this move, and the positions just seems to be clearly better for white. Mm-hmm. Material is equal, black is not developed. This is the weak point, so white has a clear advantage. But Smerdon decided, I don't know whether he was afraid of this or whether he didn't see it, I don't know. He played this, bishop g5, rook g1, and after h6, white forced the draw with rook g5, Bishop h7. So, and now they repeated the moves a couple of times, but basically it's a perpetual, and here they agreed to a draw. So I thought it was a nice game.
Indeed.
Yeah, with some tactical melees, calculations, and it shows how strong Smerdon is as a player. Yeah.
As a hobby player, almost.
As a hobby player, yeah. Okay.
You can unshare. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our longest show so far, but I think it was absolutely worth it. Super interesting. The chess world is shook up a little bit. ChessBase 18 will be there next week. Next week, 12th of November. And get your eyes on to the next week, because we will be back, of course, next Friday. Looking forward to this, Johannes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for Moderai, for leading us through the show. Thank you also for Matthias, who is not here anymore. And also, of course, thanks for David Smerdon for all his work he's doing for chess. And thanks for
100%.
Cristian, Chirila, and Fabiano Caruana for their interesting podcasts. Okay, I hope chess players who watch us have a good time and, well, maybe use ChessBase 18 to shake up their own game. So
I think they should. See you. Bye-bye.
See you next week. Bye.